Do you think he's a war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu? Do you think he's a war criminal?
Again, these are questions that a lot of people think are the important litmus tests that are loaded and hot.
What happens to Democratic politicians, they go through this like prism, and then we can't ever get like the answer to yes or no conversations like you do with Bernie and others. And that's the frustration.
I will not vote for a candidate that takes $1 from AIPAC.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I haven't thought about AIPAC. And it's interesting. You're like the first to bring up AIPAC in years.
Jennifer Welch, who's the host of the I've Had It podcast, had a special guest on her program, Senator Cory Booker, a Democratic senator. And she asked him an important question about, well, foreign policy, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, and more. Let's hear what he had to say.
Do you think he's a war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu? Do you think he's a war criminal?
Again, these are questions that a lot of people think are the important litmus tests that are loaded and hot. My urgency is to be an effective leader in bringing an end to this crisis. And I get these questions all the time that to me undermine my urgency.
I think the thing that Democrats get so frustrated with, where we are right now, where you see like the Zoran Mamdanis and the Graham Plattners rise up, because they can go on podcasts and you can say, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal? And they just say, yes. And that's the end of it. It's not all of the rhetoric answering. It's like what happens to Democratic politicians, they go through this like prism, and then we can't ever get like the answer to yes or no conversations like you do with Bernie and others. And that's the frustration for the Democratic base with leadership.
Do I think Netanyahu is worse than Trump? Yes.
Do I think Netanyahu is worse than Trump? Yes, that wasn't the question. The question was, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal? And as you can see, Cenk, he avoided answering that question. And I can get into the reasons why this Democratic senator avoided answering that question, even though there's an abundance of evidence indicating that he broke international laws and engaged in war crimes and is in fact wanted by the International Criminal Court due to the war crimes he has committed. But what did you make of what Cory Booker had to say? Maybe we're misunderstanding him. Maybe we're not giving him credit for his urgency in pursuing peace in the Middle East. What do you think?
Yeah, so Cory Booker and I will be the exact opposite because Cory Booker loves word salad. Did you see that in the beginning there? Yes. You know, because of the urgency of the question, that's why I need to not answer it and do the urgency of leadership. And what are you talking about? And what urgency of leadership are you doing other than hiding behind people while taking a picture with Netanyahu? He literally did that. And hiding his record, hiding his real beliefs. He doesn't have any real beliefs. Okay, so I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to be blunt. So Cory Booker is corrupt and works for Israel. That is super obvious, and we're going to prove it to you. We're going to show you, receipts for how much money he's taken from AIPAC, etc. But look, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it is the same answer every time. Mainstream media will not show you that clip. They will not criticize Cory Booker for that at all. They will try to hide that clip from you. They'll try to make sure that you don't find out how much money Cory Booker has gotten from the Israeli lobby, and that you never connect his votes and his lack of urgency, if you will, to borrow a phrase from Cory Booker about this issue, with the fact that he's being legally bribed by the Israeli lobby. That's what's happening. He's a crook, and almost all of mainstream media is a crook, and they all work for Israel. So, but go ahead, Anna.
Well, look, I think you're right in regard to how the American corporate media covers this very topic, how they really avoid weighing in on the corrupting factors in our federal government. And so you're right about that. But one thing that I will just point to is the fact that there has been this long-standing illusion of real disagreement among the two political parties on everything. And the fact of the matter is there are disagreements among the two political parties. I think immigration policy is probably the most substantive area in which there is disagreement between the two parties. But putting that aside, when it comes to questions of foreign policy, I don't think it's really rare to find Democratic lawmakers who are just as hawkish as Republican lawmakers. And that's, in my opinion, not due to, their values or their deep-seated principles. I think it has far more to do with the fact that we have legalized bribery in this country, the very thing that you get angry about and talk about on the show on a regular basis. And I want to give ordinary rank and file Americans, regardless of where they stand in the political spectrum, a lot of credit, because the transition away or the moving away from corporate media, from legacy media, also was not an accident. The fact that you have cable news dying, the fact that you have traditional network news like CBS dying, is because Americans don't trust those institutions anymore, because they've been discovered to not tell you the full story, or essentially stick to a specific narrative that suits the interests of the elite and the powerful. And so just to give you guys a little more background information, AIPAC Tracker says that Cory Booker has received close to $900,000, $871,563 from the Israel lobby, to be exact. And if you guys can remember, 6 years ago, back in 2019, March of 2019, The Intercept had reported on a leaked recording in which Cory Booker said that he and the AIPAC president text message back and forth like teenagers. You must be so proud. Now, with that in mind, luckily Welch asked Booker about the money he has taken from AIPAC. I actually haven't seen this video yet, and I'm super jazzed that we have it. So let's see how he answered that question.
I have disagreements with a lot of people. Look, I'm one of a handful of people that don't take corporate PAC money. I don't understand my Democratic.
What about AIPAC money? You take AIPAC money, don't you?
A minuscule percentage of my resources come from.
I read it's like 800,000.
Yeah, but that's a lifetime number of raising tens of millions of dollars. Let me give you the right stat. The majority of my money comes from small dollar contributions. My last report, I think 76% of it came from people that gave $25 or less. So this to me is about, again, we could pick at each other, or we could do what we need to be doing right now.
You think we don't know that dirty deeds are done dirt cheap, Cory Booker? And I'm sorry, but close to $1 million, $900,000, that's not a small amount of money. The fact that he's trying to convince the American people that taking close to $1 million in bribe money really has no impact on where you stand politically is laughable to me. And when you couple that with the fact that he was caught in a leaked recording, bragging about how he texts with the president of AIPAC like a teenager, the guy knows where his bread is buttered. I don't know what he actually believes about what's happening in the Middle East. I don't know if personally, he thinks that what Netanyahu is doing is wrong, or what's been happening to the Palestinian people for many, many decades is wrong. We don't know who Cory Booker really is, because he's paid to be what you're seeing on your screen today.
Yeah, so it's much, much worse than that, Anna, because there's so many different layers to the Israeli lobby money. So there's the money they give you directly, which in this case is $871,000, which he minimizes like it's no big deal. Come on, like, oh yeah, a politician's not affected by $871,000. Get out of here. But that's actually the tip of the iceberg. If you remember the story we covered about a week ago, Larry Ellison met with Marco Rubio back in 2016 when he was running for president. And he had to pass the test of, will he kiss Israel's ass enough? And then Ellison reported back to the Israeli ambassador, he has passed the test. He will basically do whatever we command him to do about Israel. And then a super PAC supporting Marco Rubio got $5 million. So if you look at the AIPAC tracker, for example, it says $1 million, a little over $1 million for Marco Rubio. But that doesn't count just the $5 million that Larry Ellison gave him in a super PAC, let alone all of the other money in super PACs, let alone all the dark money that no one can track, okay? But also on top of that, Anna, there's the money that AIPAC spends against you. So first they started spending $4 million against Andy Levin in Michigan, and then Nina Turner in Ohio. Then they started ratcheting it up. And against Jamal Bowman, they spent $20 million to defeat Jamal Bowman. So now Cory Booker is a classic cheesy politician. He knows all that. And he makes it sound like, it says $870,000. I mean, I raised so much corrupt money, tens of millions of dollars throughout my life, and I serve those guys way more than I serve Israel, but come on, let's ignore it. Get out of here, man. No one believes you. You're a dog for Israel, a total and utter dog for them. So, and to be fair to Cory Booker, though, they all are, almost all of them, not Bernie, not some others, not Ro Khanna, but certainly the great majority of the Democratic senators loyally serve Israel, not America. Obviously, almost all of the Republican senators do. Not almost, all of them do. There are a couple of congressmen like Tom Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene that don't. They're free and they represent Americans. Agree and disagree on different issues, but at least they're free, okay? So, but there's one other element, Anna, that Cory Booker's perfectly aware of. That if you criticize Israel even 1%, mainstream media will rip your face off. They'll start, the Israeli thugs, pro-Israeli thugs here in America will claim that he's anti-Semitic, and then they'll go on this giant campaign. Oh, Cory Booker, anti-Semite, pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, Cory Booker, terrible, terrible, bigot, hateful. And then mainstream media will pile on story after story on cable news. Is Cory Booker the worst anti-Semite since Goebbels? Right? And they'll do all of that, and he knows that. He's like, well, I don't want to get buried by mainstream media. I don't want to get buried by AIPAC at a $20 million avalanche against me. And I like the bribes they're giving me. Yeah, they're legalized, but they are still bribes. And I'm not telling you about the ones I'm getting from the super PACs and the dark money. So Cory, look, here's what you're not getting. We caught all of you. So all of your BS doesn't work at all. So go take that BS to MSNBC where they'll probably fillet you over it. Oh, you're so sophisticated, right? None of us find you sophisticated. You're just another crook.
Yeah, I agree with you. And look, I totally agree in regard to what motivates Cory Booker. It's not just the direct money he receives from the Israel lobby, but it's also, honestly, it's the fact that when she talks about the popularity of Zoran Mamdani, as we all know, Zoran Mamdani has been attacked by the mainstream media, specifically because of his views on Israel. Now, I wish they spent more time analyzing some of the policy proposals he has, because I think that's way more important than what he views in terms of the best possible foreign policy in the Middle East. He's going to be the mayor of New York City. He's not going to have any jurisdiction over foreign policy. But again, I think that his popularity also has to do with the fact that the media, the corporate media, which the American public in general really doesn't trust, continues to attack him. It only has helped Mamdani, but these like dinosaurs of the political establishment don't understand it, and they think that everything is operating as business as usual. Cory Booker is so utterly detached from ordinary Americans that he doesn't really understand how fed up people are with the fact that, well, Congress pretty much does nothing for ordinary people these days. And then on top of that, you have a government shutdown. They're still collecting our taxes. They're still collecting a paycheck, by the way. And when it comes to funding for foreign wars, well, there's no debate about that. That passes easily. Yeah, Americans are sick of it, left and right. And so we'll see how this plays for Cory Booker moving forward. But I think he's wrong in thinking that things are operating the way they previously did. If he's afraid of the media, the corporate media attacking him, well, he's got a bad head on his shoulders. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, look, last two things. He says, well, instead of spending our time picking at each other, this is what corporate Democrats always do. Shut up and obey us. We're gonna give all of your money to Israel. Oh, you're criticizing us because they're in the middle of a genocide and the guy I'm supporting and love and cherish and have supported throughout my career is a war criminal and I won't say it? Well, we're just picking at each other. But brother, you're not on our side. What do you mean each other? We don't want to fund a genocide. You do want to fund a genocide. We want you to work for America. You want to work for Israel. By the way, you also want to work for all your other donors. Have you torn the place apart demanding that we negotiate drug prices at Medicare? You might have done some BS theatrics about it. You might have spoken out and done a filibuster literally on nothing on nothing. That stuff is going to work for 78-year-olds that watch CNN and MSNBC. The rest of us know that your filibuster was literally over nothing and that you're not doing anything to negotiate drug prices. You didn't do it when the Democrats were in charge. You didn't insist on it. You didn't insist on the minimum wage when Biden was in charge. You didn't insist on anything that is our priorities. You don't work for us. You're not on the Democratic side. You're on the side of the donor class. And we're not on the side of the donor class. So look, and that leads to the last point, which is what Anna was saying. These guys in Washington, they still don't get it because everyone they know is also corrupt. So they go to their parties and they go on TV and they go to all these things and they're like, and they play ass slap football with each other. Israel's great, isn't it? Oh, my donors are great. We're still lying to everyone, right? We're not gonna get caught. Dude, we know you're actors. You're all caught. The minute he goes online and does an interview, they ask him the simplest question: is Netanyahu a war criminal? 98% of the planet thinks he is. The other 2% live in Washington. It's actually a super easy question. He's like, well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, go try that stuff on Scarborough, okay? That stuff doesn't fly here. So just another typical greasy politician.
I will not vote for a candidate that takes $1 from AIPAC.
It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting. I haven't thought about AIPAC, and it's interesting. You're like the first to bring up AIPAC in years.
Is it interesting? Okay, that was California Governor Gavin Newsom malfunctioning as he was being asked a question that he didn't expect and didn't really seem prepared to answer. Now, Newsom malfunctioned and said the word interesting a total of 8 times after he was confronted on the topic of AIPAC and the Israel lobby. Just to give you a little bit of background, Democratic voters have really soured on the issue of Israel. Okay, they are not supportive of what Israel has been carrying out in Gaza, in the West Bank, and much of the Middle East, to be quite frank, and have now been paying closer attention to whether the politicians they've been favorable toward are being funded by the Israel lobby. And so Democratic lawmakers, state and local leaders, you're now on notice. If you're taking AIPAC money, you're gonna be asked about it. And try to do better than what we're about to hear from Gavin Newsom.
I will not vote for a candidate that takes $1 from AIPAC.
It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting. I haven't thought about AIPAC, and it's interesting. You're like the first to bring up AIPAC in years, which is interesting. Why did I say that? Not relevant to my day-to-day life.
Okay,
which is just interesting.
Listen,
it's interesting you say that. JPAC perhaps more, but AIPAC less and less.
Okay, fair enough.
Which is just interesting.
What's interesting about it?
That it's just interesting as you bring up AIPAC that it hasn't been part of. I'm just reflecting quite openly and honestly.
Okay, I love this so much for so many different reasons. So obviously Newsom sounds idiotic, but for those who don't know, the podcast that he's appearing on is the Higher Learning Podcast, which is hosted by Van Lathan and Rachel Lindsay. And for whatever reason, my eyes are fixated on Lindsay because her face was so funny as he kept saying interesting. She was just like, you could just see she's like, oh, this is not going well for Gavin Newsom. By the way, the conversation with Gavin Newsom, I listened to the whole thing. I want to commend them for asking tough questions because that wasn't the only tough question they asked him. And that's how it's done. I love it. All right, now Representative Ro Khanna was unimpressed with Newsom's comments, writing that this is not interesting. It is defining for the future of our party. We must be for human rights, not take PAC and lobbyist money, including AIPAC, and call out the genocide to win the trust of young voters and have America be a moral leader in the world again. Agree, Van Lathan? Now, a few minutes earlier, Lathan had asked Newsom if he was in favor of halting all military assistance to Israel, and let's see how that went.
Are you in favor of halting military assistance to Israel?
Well, I mean, the timing's a curious one when the precipice of a phase 1 deal that was announced today and a ceasefire.
Oh, even if this is over.
But I get it.
Yeah.
So look, no, I'm not prepared to say that I would support a blanket exemption for military support of Israel. That said, I've been very vocal in my opposition to Bibi Netanyahu. Said he doubled down on stupid on Meet the Press like a year ago. I'm sitting here on your behalf, you're a taxpayer, as the only governor in the United States that sent a field hospital to Gaza and got it in through a third-party country, and is disgusted by what's happened in Gaza as a human being, as a father, to see these children, and how this war has been perpetuated by Bibi Netanyahu. I also have deep respect for the right of the state of Israel to exist and defend itself.
Okay, he seems defensive, if you ask me. And look, Lathan did follow up with a pretty good point. So if Newsom hates Netanyahu so much, then why would he want to, why wouldn't he want to stop sending Netanyahu money, military aid? Let's see how he answered that.
I guess the question is, if there's an admission or an understanding that the prime minister of a country is acting in a way that's either irresponsible, callous, or inhumane, why would we continue to support that country militarily?
I think that's the executive's role, to leverage that. We do that a lot. I mean, that's part of the game of leverage. But to eliminate support across the board is something, to me, is a bridge too far. Conditioning in a thoughtful way with a flexibility of criteria, flexibility with conditions that are changing on an hourly or daily basis or weekly basis as it relates to not just what's happening in Gaza, but what's happening in Lebanon, what's happening in Iran, what's happening in Syria and other parts of the Middle East, is where I think you have to be careful. And I just don't think there's a clean way of answering that without the nuance that I think it deserves.
Well, there you have the governor of California competing with Kamala Harris in the word salad Olympics. What was that? What was that? Let me just list off a bunch of other Middle Eastern countries and talk about leverage and then do the little weird shoulder shimmy. You are not guided by values or principles. It is very obvious Newsom destroyed the state of California and yet feels entitled to the highest office of this land. It's gonna run for president in 2028. I get that I'm deeply, deeply biased against him as a victim of his leadership here in the state of California. But let me just give him a tip. I don't know if he's even capable of doing this, but let me just give him a tip. Be authentic for once in your life. You're afraid of Israel or you support Israel, but either one, doesn't matter, has led you to supporting Israel and backing it economically, financially, even though we're talking about a country that had an economic surplus in 2021 when we haven't had one since 2001. Now look, as governor of California, his views on Israel don't matter that much, but his views on Israel matter a lot if he is the head of this entire country, if he's the president of the United States. And I will not vote for any politician that takes any money from the Israel lobby. I never thought I would be a single issue voter, but that's my single issue at this point. Because I see our alliance with Israel as an existential threat to the United States. I said it. Take a good hard look at where we were standing economically in the year 2000. Did we have debt in 2000? No. But our debt blew up after 2001, after the 9/11 attacks on our country. That spurred endless wars that we fight allegedly for our own national security, but it turns out, no, not for our own national security. A lot of those wars, including the war in Iraq, our boots on the ground in Libya, our engagement in the proxy war in Syria, where we literally indirectly armed Al-Qaeda terrorists, and now there's an Al-Qaeda terrorist leading the country of Syria as a result. That was all done on behalf of Israel. We paid for that. We're in debt. At least $37 trillion. Who knows what the number is now, considering the big beautiful bill added another $4 trillion in debt for that. We're bailing out Argentina. We're providing more military aid to Ukraine. We're just bleeding money, bleeding. I guess that's America first. So the real question is, does Newsom represent a paradigm shift or not? And I would venture to say that he doesn't. He's super defensive, doesn't give you straight answers. He's pathetic. I can't stand him. Now, we have very little publicly available information about whether or not Newsom takes money from pro-Israel organizations, and that's because he has run in and won in state and local elections. So it's harder to track that money, unfortunately. But we did find an article from 2008 in which Newsom went to an all expenses paid trip to Israel. And we all know what those trips are about. It's all about propaganda on behalf of Israel to get these politicians to support Israel and also to spy on our politicians, as we've learned recently. Newsom was the mayor of San Francisco at the time. The goal of the trip is to create connections between Bay Area and Israeli business leaders. No, thank you. I don't think we need that. Nonetheless, a Newsom spokesperson said this. Many executives, including Richard Bloom, husband of US Senator Dianne Feinstein, are going. That is the least surprising thing I've read in my entire life. He will not visit the Palestinian territories during his stay, the mayor's spokesperson said, also unsurprising. And this month, Newsom signed AB 715 into law in the state of California, which is intended to stop anti-Semitism in schools. So it is unbelievable. So it was supported by AIPAC, among many other leading Jewish organizations. Much of the requirements in the law, which takes effect on January 1st, are open to interpretation. Teachers must be factually accurate in lessons and adhere to unspecified standards of professional responsibility while avoiding advocacy, personal opinion, bias, or partisanship. Just want to remind you all that our textbooks were published by a Mossad agent for many decades, Robert Maxwell. He's luckily dead now. But Macmillan, McGraw-Hill, those were the social studies and history books, textbooks that I grew up on. And I had no idea that there was a Mossad agent publishing them. That's not an issue though. The issue is we need to stop anti-Semitism by hindering the speech of students who might want to be critical of the genocidal campaign that Israel has been engaging in. Got it, okay. It also creates an Office of Civil Rights within a state agency, meaning taxpayers are gonna fund this garbage, which will include an anti-Semitism prevention coordinator to consult with school districts and advise lawmakers on preventing anti-Semitism in schools. Newsom has acknowledged that the bill will likely require follow-up legislation since the language is so vague. We have a housing crisis in the state. We have more homeless people in California than all the other states combined. This is what they're spending their time on. The state legislature, along with the leadership, political leadership in California, is beyond embarrassing. Their state is in shambles. I would know, I live here. And you have Newsom and the rest of the Democratic state legislature fiddling around with policies to make Israel happy. It's gross.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.